Now listen very carefully. The next few minutes, this sounds a bit pompous, but it's true. The next few minutes could be the most important minutes in the lives of some of you. If you could grasp this, you've hit upon the secret for awakening. You would be happy forever. You would never be unhappy again. Nothing, but nothing would have the power to hurt you. And I mean that. Nothing. It's like, you take black paint and throw it up in the air and keep throwing black paint in the air. The air is uncontaminated. You don't color the air black. And no matter what happens to you, you remain uncontaminated. You remain at peace. There are human beings, and you know it, who have attained to this. That is what I call human, not what people are generally living. That's what I call being a human being. That's what I call natural. Not this nonsense of being a puppet, jerked about this way and that, having any event or any person tell you how to feel, and then you proceed to feel it. They call it being vulnerable. I call it being a puppet. Want to be a puppet? You press a button and you're down. You like that? So there it is. If you do not identify with any of those labels, first of all, most of your worries cease. What are you generally worried about? Later we'll talk about your fear of disease and death. But ordinarily you're worried about what's going to happen to your career. A businessman, small-time businessman kind of, 55 years old. He's sipping beer somewhere at a bar and he thinks, well, look at my classmates. They've really made it. The idiots, they've made it. What do you mean they've made it? They got their names in the newspapers, you call that made it? They got their names in the news, in the prison journal, which all the prisoners are reading. And he thinks they've made it. Successful president of a corporation. The other guy has become the chief justice, and somebody else has become this, and the other person has become that. Monkeys, all of them. Who determines what it means to be a success? The main preoccupation of society is to keep society sick. And the sooner you realize that, the better. Every one of them. Most of them. They're loony. They're crazy. You became the president of the lunatic asylum, and you're proud of it. It means nothing. It really means nothing. Being the president of a corporation has absolutely nothing to do with being awake, or being happy, or being a success in life. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Having a lot of money has nothing to do with being a success in life. You're a success in life when you wake up. When you don't have to apologize to anyone. When you don't have to explain anything to anyone. You don't feel the need to explain anything to anyone. You don't give a damn what anybody thinks of you or what anybody says about you. You have no worry. You're happy. Now that's what I call being a success. I don't know about you. So this poor guy is thinking sadly that he isn't a success like his classmates. Nobody has ever told him that having a good job and being famous and having a great reputation has absolutely nothing to do with happiness or success. Nothing. It's totally irrelevant. And so he's worried about what his children will think about him. What will the neighbors think about him? What will his wife think? He should have become famous. That's what your society and your culture is drilling into your head day and night, and so is mine. People who made it. Made what? Made asses of themselves. Because they drained all their energy in getting something that was worthless. And they're frightened, and they're confused, and they're puppets like the rest. Look at them strutting across the stage. Look how upset they'd get if they had a stain on their shirt. You call that a success? Look how frightened they are at the prospect that they may not be re-elected. You call that a success? So controlled, so manipulated. These are not happy people. These are miserable people. They don't enjoy life. They're constantly tense and anxious. You call that human? And do you know why that happened? There's only one reason. They identified with some label. They identified the I. That was their error. With their money, with their job, with their profession.
It's an insane world. You understand? There is no sanity in the political world, in the religious world, right? In the economic world, there is no sanity. So, please, I'm just pointing out to you, whether you're grown up or leaving this marvelous valley, or staying here for another 2-4 years. Don't be corrupt inside. Don't seek vanity, proud, pride. Don't say I'm superior to somebody else. You know, you learn a great deal when there is humility. You know the word humility? You learn a great deal if you are really humble. But if you are merely seeking success, money, 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 power, position, status, you see, then you are beginning with corruption. You might be poor. Be poor. Who cares? That's why it's important for you, for all of you, find your own talent and stick to it, even though it doesn't bring you success, fame, and all that, which is all nonsense anyhow, because we're all going to die. You understand, old boy? While you live, live. Not with all the rubbish that's going on.
So then, why don't people realize this?
Because they don't think, they don't feel, they are thinking about themselves all the time. Their job, their administration, their work. You understand? They're not interested in this.
There was a land in which there lived a young man who grew up having a very normal boyhood. He roamed the hills and he went to school and he read books and he lived a very normal life as a young man, a happy boyhood. As he grew a little older, he was walking down the street of the city one day, and he noticed something that he never ever noticed before. He knew that it was there before, but being young, he wasn't interested in this sort of thing, but he finally noticed it. And what he noticed, there were a certain number of men, not too many of them, who walked down the street with a certain kind of a helmet on their head. It was a very attractive helmet, well designed with gold ornaments on it. And he also noticed that these helmets, which were relatively rare, and yet a number of people had them, they had different colors to them. Some were black, some were black and white, some had 3 colors, different colors of the helmets. So he went home and he asked his older brother, I noticed these helmets that maybe one man out of 5,000 wore in town. What are these helmets all about? And his brother said, well, about time that you understood this, it's very interesting. The men wearing these helmets are called helmeted heroes. And they receive these very special helmets for achieving a certain special kind of success in our country. What they do is that they are given certain dangerous and awesome tasks, which when they accomplish it, they're giving a hero for a helmet for a hero. So the brother explained a little more. For example, there's a black helmet for a young man who has achieved the success, according to our society here, who's achieved the success of going out in the dark woods and living there all alone without any help, relying only on his own resources, and he gets a black helmet for it. And of course he's honored and considered one of the great men of the society. So all these men who perform various tasks are called helmeted heroes. That's how we create our heroes, by giving them certain things to achieve, and if they succeed, then they become great men in our country. And by the way, the older brother said, I'm about to leave tomorrow, as a matter of fact, for the dark woods to see if I can win one of these helmets from society by going out in the dark woods and staying there all alone, finding my own food in the woods, no help from anyone, bearing the loneliness and the insecurity of it. I'm leaving tomorrow, and if I succeed in staying there for 6 months, we'll have a hero in the family. So the next day he left. His parents and brothers and sisters said goodbye, and the officials took him out to the dark woods, and he made it. 6 months later he came back, and he was given a grand welcome by his own neighborhood and own family, and in a big public ceremony downtown he was given a black helmet. He was now a helmeted hero. And the younger brother, of course, looked up and admired the successful older brother. And he got real excited, too. He said, that's the way society works. This is how to become somebody. Pass these tests that society has set up, and I'll be a hero, too. And he wanted so badly to be recognized by others, just as his brother had. So the time came, he got a little bit older, and he was given his first test. The first one was staying out in the woods for 6 months. So he was taken out, the edge of town, walked into the woods, and from the very start, the whole woods overwhelmed him. He was lonely, he was scared, and it rained while he was out there, and he cried. Here he was, a grown-up young man, but he cried. He was glad no one could see him cry. And where he managed to find some place to sleep, he would have nightmares, and he'd shout out at night, and he woke himself up with his own shouting. He managed to stay just 2 weeks out there. And in great shame and sorrow and defeat, he just knew he couldn't take it anymore. So he came to the edge of the woods, and when he had walked a mile or so out of them, the officials from town saw him, and they came over and they gave him a pat on the back and took him back home. And when he got in the house, his older brother was there, and so was the rest of his family, and they all looked at him, and they, of course, knew what had happened. He had failed the test of becoming a helmeted hero. And the younger brother saw something on the face of his older brother that made him really hate someone for the first time in his life. And what he saw was a snicker on his older brother's face. And he knew that his older brother was glad that he had failed, because now, of course, the older brother was the only hero in the family. While it made him very angry, he also determined that he was going to pass the next test, which turned out to be, for a white helmet, you had to go up the start of a long raging river and take a canoe down it 100 miles down to the end of the river. And if you succeeded in that, you became a hero, helmeted hero with a white helmet. Failed that too. After a few miles of sputtering and half drinking half the river and being scared and bumping into rocks along the way and breaking the canoe down, went off the side and was getting met by officials and taken home. Began to understand that he had certain feelings in him for the first time he'd never had before, which was a great conflict. The conflict of wanting to succeed as he's told he had to succeed, and yet not being able to do it. He had one test left. And that was go for a red helmet. A volcano being red, he was told, third test, you go up to the volcano some distance from town, you walk up the side of it, and you walk inside the rim of it, and there's a trail that leads all around the inside of this hot, steaming volcano. You pass that test, come back, and you'll be one of the helmeted heroes. He walked up, and it was hard enough just hiking up the rocks, past the rocks up to the volcano. Went inside, was in great fear of his life from the moment he descended inside the volcano. Started walking 50 or 100 yards around. Saw his feet slipping out from under him. He saw that steaming lava down there. He just managed to get back in time. And he came out of the volcano and went home. And later that night, he heard a remark that changed the course of his life. And what he heard was his father talking to his mother in the next room, and his own father made the remark, "I don't think he'll amount to much." And he knew that his father was talking about him. And he also lost his girlfriend, because his girlfriend didn't want to run around with a loser. She wanted a man who had a helmet, a helmeted hero. His life went downhill inwardly. He was in great torment. He was in the impossible position of wanting to be someone, and life wouldn't let him be someone. And he didn't know what to do about it except to turn into bitterness and inner violence and hatred of everyone, because he considered everyone his enemy now, because they had assigned the task to him and he had failed. And he wanted so much to be one of those who could walk down the street with a helmet of one color or another and say, "I'm a hero." So his life went on this way for a number of years. One day he came out of his house, and there was a stranger on the sidewalk in front of his home. And the stranger apparently was looking around for a certain address, so the man said to him, "Can I help you find your address?" And the stranger said, "I found it. As a matter of fact, you're just the man I'm looking for. I come from another country, as you can probably tell. I don't dress like you do. And I have a message from you from the other country. The people from my country have been watching you, and they think it's about time that you were told something." And he was astonished. He said, "Well, what's the message from your country?" And the stranger said, the message is, this country is loaded with helmeted zeros." And he said, "Pardon?" He said, "Helmeted zeros. I know you call them heroes here, but we understand what's going on in your country here. And we know hearts and minds and spirits of the people who live here. And we thought it was just about time that someone as bad off as you are has a chance to recover, has a chance to understand what's going on. And so they had a conversation out there on the sidewalk very casually, and the stranger explained a few things to him. He said, you know, all this has been set up as a gigantic conspiracy by people who want to be heroes, and all they have is something on the outside. This is the only way they can tell someone else that they're right, that they're true, that they're courageous, that they're heroic. And if you'd like to do something, sir, the stranger talked to the resident of this mad country, I want you to watch what happens to these people when they take their helmets off. And you'll see that they're not courageous at all, that they're an entirely different kind of human being. They have nothing on the inside that matches what they're supposed to have as shown on the outside. They're not helmeted heroes at all. And we would call them zeros simply because they have nothing of their own. The stranger went away, and the man began thinking about this astonishing adventure that he had had. From the time he was a small child, he tracked it back. And he could see the whole thing, how his hopes had been developed by the plan, by the scheme that his country had set up. If you do this, you will be a hero. If you fail, we still accept you, but you're not a hero in our eyes anymore. And he understood what the stranger meant as he went away. You look at these helmeted heroes, and you'll see that they have nothing of their own, nothing of true value. And this fascinated him. His own losses, his own humiliation, losing his girlfriend to the helmeted heroes. And he began to understand one thing, that there was a turning point in his life, but he didn't know where it was turning toward or what was beyond his present life. And he looked. Every day he went out and tried to find this stranger again, but he didn't see him till a long time later, a year later. He finally saw him down on the street and went over and talked to him. And the stranger said, I know you've been looking for me, but you still have a lot to learn from yourself for a while. So now you're ready for the next part of the lesson, which is this. And I would like you to listen to this too, please. The stranger said, if you'll listen carefully, I'll tell you what your problem is. Your problem is not with this country you're living in, that you were born in. Your problem is not with your brother making sneering remarks when you didn't pass. Your problem isn't with your parents. It isn't with the people who set up this success system in which you failed. It isn't that at all. Let me tell you what it is. And you'll have to think long and hard about this, but it will change everything. You lose all your heartache, all your pain. You won't care whether you have this or that person in your life at all, because you'll be a free human being. Now here's what your problem is. You are thinking about what other people are thinking about you. And the stranger said, let me repeat that. You are thinking about what other people are thinking about you. But you have to understand, and look at the gold in this. You have to understand that you're thinking about what they're thinking is your thought itself. It belongs to you. And if you understand this, you will see clearly what you've been trying to see for this year or so. You've been trying to see where the problem is. Wouldn't it be nice to know, the stranger said to the man, still talking to him, to know that the only place the problem resides, the only place it resides in the way you're thinking, and you're thinking all wrong. And he explained many other things to him, for example, things that we've explained in this class, that you think about other people and think about how they think toward you. You think about that in order to make your existence seem real. Do you understand, those of you watching this film and listening here in this room, that you are not the thoughts that you project out into this world? Why do you tie yourself down to your own thoughts, bounce them back, bounce them off of other people, and then think about what they are thinking about you? Now, this makes you very nervous because you have certain idealistic ideas about yourself in which you flatter yourself, or in which you see yourself as a victim, as a martyr, or whatever. You have all these thoughts, and you look around and hope that other people, maybe your friends or relatives, are going to think in the same way that you do in order to make you feel right. And if you do that, you are not right, you are wrong. Why do any of you here in this room fall for the conspiracy of society? And you're falling for it tonight. You're falling for it before tonight. Society has set it up, and it's set up its heroes, whether they're political or military or religious. In what particular camp does your hero dwell? Is it another human being, maybe a relative of some kind? You want to be like your mother? You want to be like your father? You set up all these ideals about what you want to be like, and it can never live out that way. How can it ever be, if even on the simplest of level? You know that life does not duplicate itself exactly, and why should you want it? Don't you want to live your own life and let it unfold as it unfolds, instead of putting a directive on top of it which has been pressed down on you by society? You know what you've been through in this world. You understand in your heart exactly what I'm talking about, because you know the frustration that has resulted by you trying to live up to the impositions of society. We all fell for the promises, didn't we? They told us if we would pass through certain tests, if we would do certain things, we would be rewarded. Do you know why anyone sets up a test for another human being? In order to give himself as a reward. Don't you understand that human beings who are empty in their spirit can't possibly ever do one thing for anyone else? How can egotism ever be freedom? How can a sick mind ever do healthy things? How can a person who is trying to have a helmet of his own to call himself a hero, how can he have any concern for you? And if he seems to have, it's in furtherance of his own aims, which he will disguise very carefully. Now that is the problem of society, that they have set this up, and we believed in it, we followed it out, and consequently, of course, we got hurt, and we got bitter, and we got hateful, and we never knew what a blunder we made. That stranger coming from the other world, you know what world I'm talking about, don't you? A world that has nothing to do with this insanity, this wanting to be someone, wanting an ego victory or whatever. This other country is watching in this class itself, in the whole world, for a few men, for a few women who have gone through it all and don't want to go through it anymore. Someone who is willing to disbelieve everything he's ever been told by anyone dwelling in this land that the young man lived in. You're going to have to become a conscious outlaw. You're going to, let's put it a little different way, you're going to have to love truth more than you love falsehood. You're going to have to love something that is invisible more than you love the visible. And there's a tough one for most people, an impossible one for most people. How many women, foolish women, cling to a man because he appears strong, because he's physical and he's there physically? How many equally foolish men see a woman and he likes what he gets from her, and she's company and someone to talk to. To two sick people, two lost people, two scared people come together, bring their lives together, cling together, and never ever learn that there's an invisible world that they could have had. Had they chosen to put the invisible world, this other country world, before their immediate so-called securities, their immediate comforts. Let's go back to the point. Are you aware of how much you think about what other people think about you? If you're not, then you watch your behavior and you try to find things that you do for other people so that they will think well of you, or things that you avoid doing that you'd like to do. You'd like to be sarcastic sometimes, wouldn't you? But you want them to think well toward you so that you can keep your illusion going that you're okay and you're not. The very fact that you have to do that means you're not okay. Look in your own mind and see how you're always thinking about how the other person thinks about you. How can another person's thoughts hurt you in any way? But you're thinking about their thoughts, thinking that maybe you have offended them and they're going to get revenge, or they're going to leave you, or they're going to think less of you. Why don't you risk it? Why don't you risk losing everything? It's the only way you're going to get free of this hoax that society played on you. That if you pass their test, you'll be okay. And if you don't, you're a disgrace or a failure. We'll tolerate you, but you just didn't make it. And you believed in that. Because you believed in the false story of success, you now believe in the false story of failure. I know that those of you watching this film, you here too, I know that you believe in failure. You believe in failure because you believe in yourself as a failure. And then it's all nothing at all. It's a zero. It's empty. It's hollow. It's a long, long, long struggle to give up being a success or a failure. And if you don't understand what I just said, you go home tonight and you think about it thoroughly. I don't care what your position is, whether you're a businessman or you're at home taking care of the children. Whatever your position is, whether you're young or old, you go home and you find out where thoughts, success and failure alternate with each other in 1,000 different ways. If they are still alternating in you, this means you're still living in that country. And the stranger, which is truth, the only one who can rescue you from it, is not trying to rescue you from anything but your own delusory thinking about being somebody or about being nobody. Shall I tell you a little bit about yourself, a little bit more? You're so afraid of being nobody. Because if you're nobody, then how are you going to attract other people into your life whom you feel you need? I'll tell you, if you listen to that stranger, that truth, come to the very end of everything that he's talking about, you will live in an utterly different land where there's no striving at all, there's no shame, and anything that your father said to you or your mother did to you, or that your brother did, all that will have no meaning to you at all, because you've seen that sick society sets up sick standards in order to reward themselves. And if you are still suffering, if you're still afraid, I am telling you that you are still a part of the system that gives the rewards of the helmets, the helmeted heroes, because you still want one for yourself. And that's why you're still scared. In this other land, there's no need for helmets at all. There's no need for glory. There's no need for one individual to be separate from another. There's just one great big unity, of unity which you can't think about, which exists, and you know it from something higher than you're thinking about it. And then someday, some of you in this room may go back to that dreary land that the young man was brought up in. You may go back to that land and you may be the stranger. You may understand things so well that the king of that other land will send you back to talk to people, to the few people who want to hear, who want to listen. And you'll be able to talk very clearly, perfectly to anyone who wants to know these answers, because you'll know them yourself. Because you know that you were born in this world, and you know the parallel between the story tonight and what happened to you, don't you? You remember what tests you were told about, that if you succeeded in business, you succeeded in marriage, you succeeded in becoming popular. Didn't work out, did it? You thought you were going to get the helmet, and it always evaded you. There's something wrong with the instructions for heroism that this society that we live in has given us. You had better see through them for your sake.
Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life, that there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. Do you know what I'm talking about? The Matrix. Do you want to know what it is? The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind.